Em, can you believe we started Interview Boss in 2021?
Not really. It's insane. That's a lot of episodes and a lot of hours of talking.
Oh my gosh, it is. And if you're scrolling through all of our episodes, you might scroll straight past something that you really, really needed.
Yes, we're always getting messages from people asking us to do an episode on something, and I'm like, we already have.
So we've put together playlists to help you find the episodes that are exactly what you need, suited to your situation.
They're all categorized. If you're applying for jobs, we have episodes about resumes, cover letters, job ads. If you've been offered your dream job, we have episodes on resigning, exit interviews, and how to impress at your new company.
And we even have a very special playlist that's very popular for if you have an interview coming up immediately and you need just our most recommended hard-hitting episodes between now and then.
For all our last-minute listeners. It's all there for you. You can browse by category and check out all the playlists at interviewboss.com.au/podcast.
To me, if you're going through an interview, in essence, you're selling yourself, right? So, whether that's from the resume itself or once you get into the process a bit more, it's the whole thing is you're showing your capabilities of sales there from the get-go.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Interview Boss. My name's Sarah, I'm an HR and recruitment professional, and I've teamed up with my sister to give you advice, inspiration and support when you're looking for a new job. Together we're excited to give you guys all the tips, tricks and behind the scenes knowledge to help you in your career. This week we're bringing you a new type of episode we're calling Interview with a Boss, where we chat to hiring managers in different fields to find out what they look for in the hiring process. So our very first boss guest has two very important roles. First, as the commercial manager of 3PL at the Winning Group, but secondly, as my boyfriend. Welcome, James Malone.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
And you're also a huge fan of the podcast, I hear.
Very much so, very much so. We never miss an episode.
So before we get started, who is this episode for? Who's out there listening? Well, if you're applying for jobs in customer service or sales, this will be really, really helpful. But even if you're not, this will be an insight into a manager's perspective on the hiring process. And I'm sure there'll be something that you can take away for your job search. So, James, give us a bit of background. What kind of roles have you had? What teams have you managed? And what the roles that you've hired for in the past?
Yeah, sure. No worries. Currently, as you stated, I'm the commercial manager of the whole 3PL division within the Winning Group, which is very exciting. Before that, I was GM of commercial for Appliances Online, which was a great role. I had about 26 people under me there, which was good fun. Prior to that, I looked after the buying team. I was head of the buying team for Appliances Online. In previous companies, I worked for a company called Red Eye International, where I was sales director over in London. Had a team of about 11 people under me over there. Prior to that, worked for a company called UXC Eclipse, working my way through from lower levels right through to into the account management business development team, and setting up the software as a service. Business development arm within that, and had numerous people under that. Before then, I actually studied hotel management and hotel and business management, and was F&B manager of a number of hotels around the hospitality industry as well, restaurants, bars, you name it. So have done many interviews over the years, and for whether they be good or bad for that matter.
Yeah, I love that. So what are the roles that you would say that you've managed the most? Is it probably, sounds like account manager, sales, customer service? Are they probably the main ones?
On top of that, customer service, administration, what have you. On top of that, they also used to drag me in to a lot of other interviews around the company when we needed one of the senior managers' opinion of somebody. A lot of customer service, customer facing type roles.
They drag you in because you absolutely hate a chat. That must be right.
Absolutely hate a chat. That's correct. Yeah, it's terrible.
So let's start at the beginning of the hiring process. What do you look for in a CV if, the recruitment person's not, shortlisting for you and you get a whole bunch of CVs on your desk? What would you be looking for?
Good question. Probably the first thing is just the initial appearance of the CV, information being laid out, the relevant information being laid out at a glance. You don't want to have to be diving through the CV to find it. All the latest, most relevant stuff right at the back there. You want a snapshot, if you will, nice and quickly, along with person's details, etc. Then most importantly, I suppose, for myself, when I'm looking at, previous roles, because most of the positions that I'm hire for, it's people that have had experience in some sort of sales role or account management role for some time. I like it when they've got, obviously, where they worked, the responsibilities there, but I like it when they quantify that. So, if you've increased revenue by X percent, or up to a certain, achieved targets and list a target type thing, like quantify the information that you're putting forward there. So, because it also, it gives me, I suppose, an indication of your capabilities there. Also, it gives me an understanding. It allows me to ask questions around that as well. If you've been an account manager, for example, where you manage some larger clients, sometimes it's good to list them because then I can ask you around those clients. They might be clients that we also deal with on our side. So things that are going to resonate with the, I suppose, the interviewer.
And I think for people out there, they often think if they were in a customer service role, okay, how do they quantify, they didn't sell anything necessarily. But I think we talk about this in our resume episode as the prove it section of the guess what, prove it, so what. And you can use things like, what's the size of that account? How much did that represent? How many accounts did you manage? How many phone calls did you take? How many meetings did you have? All those sorts of bits and pieces that are still helpful for someone reading your CV to look at.
Yeah. Even things like, a lead-in point around, resolved conflict resolution or things like that, because then it allows myself or whoever the interviewer might be to drill down on those sorts of comments, and where you can sort of elaborate around that point. Ultimately, to me, if you're going through an interview, in essence, you're selling yourself, right? So, whether that's from the resume itself or once you get into the process a bit more, it's the whole thing is you're showing your capabilities of sales there from the get-go.
Yeah, absolutely. So, on that note, let's go to the interview. Tell me about the worst interview that you ever conducted.
Oof. Yeah, okay. There's been a few. There's been a lot of good ones, but there have been a few shockers. Look, I would say, I definitely had one person that showed up, presented very poorly. I think they rocked up in track pants.
Oh.
It was. I mean, you're going for a sales job, right? Put on a suit.
Yeah.
Even if it doesn't fit, just put on a suit. Borrow one from your mates.
Suit up.
Even if you. Yeah, suit up, suit and tie, presentation. In essence, again, you're selling yourself, you're selling the representation of what you'll be like when you eventually get out in the field when you're working for me. So, make sure you look the part, make sure you look neat and tidy. But yeah, I had one person rock up basically in tracksuit pants, didn't know the first thing about the company, hadn't really done much research. I got the feeling that they applied for just a million jobs type thing, and we're sort of having a crack at anything. Look, credit to them for at least playing the numbers game, but sort of didn't do too well.
The shotgun approach.
The person, the shotgun approach. From memory, the person they were talking over you a little bit as well, like you're asking questions, and as you started to drill down on some of the things, they'd sort of coming back over the top of you, like ease up, mate. Perhaps let me finish first. But yeah,
wow.
there's definitely been some interesting ones.
That's terrible. Absolutely terrible. And you just think as well, like if this is how you've presented at your best in your trackies, what are you going to look like when you turn up to work and you're a bit tired? It's only downhill.
No, true. The other thing I would also say, which is very important, be on time or be a little early, to be honest. It bodes well. it just shows commitment, bit of dedication there.
Definitely.
So yeah, when people are sort of late to it and all of a sudden making excuses, or I think at one time actually somebody brought a letter. They missed one interview for whatever reason, then they brought a letter from their mum or something. It was not a good look. Yeah, not a good look at all.
It's like I read something the other day about people's mums or partners calling in sick to work for them. I just thought, wow, imagine your boss getting a call from, hi, this is Sarah's mum. She's not feeling well today. Like, you're an adult.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, if you end up in hospital or something like that, okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Something pretty serious. But if it's she's got a case of the sore tummy or something, then probably at least take the time to pick up the phone yourself.
Yeah. I find with sales interviews as well, like with a lot of other jobs, say you're going for a technical data analysis role, right? You might not be the best interviewer, or a person at interviews, but the manager's looking for different types of skills. So they'll normally be a bit helpful with it and guide you along to get down to the, the actual skill set you've got. But if you're going for a sales interview, they're measuring how good are you in this situation. Like, you're going to be out in front of our clients. Are you going to be late for them? Are you going to be non-presentable for them? Are you going to be, talking over the top of them? So I think with a sales interview, you really need to get that kind of first impressions right. So what type of interviewer would you say that you are? Are you harsh? Are you easygoing? Are you kind of like, don't give much away? You're a bit cryptic?
Good question. Look, I'd like to think I'm relatively easygoing.
No.
For me, it's surprisingly, I want the person to I try to break the ice. I try to get through the barriers, right? Often people come in and they're a bit nervous. We've all been there. We've all gone for jobs where we've been a bit nervous, a bit unknown, a fear of the unknown, if you will. So with me, when I first start the interview, I tend to not get straight to the point. I tend to throw them some questions like what you do on the weekends. Do you have any hobbies? Do you have a favorite sports team? Something, you get them talking on it, right? One of the tricks to sales, or not the tricks, but the key to sales is you sell by asking questions, right? You need to understand the pain points, or you need to understand what the requirement is, and then you I suppose you pitch your services or your product or your services, around the questions you've uncovered, around the pain points, if you will, that you've uncovered. Now, same thing applies in an interview. If somebody's nervous, I personally like to break that down. So you get them comfortable, and you see it in their body language when they start to relax. As they start talking about something they're familiar with, the shoulders drop a little bit. They sort of, you can see that the talking slows down a little bit as well, and you can see that they get comfortable. Once you get them comfortable, that's when you start the probing questions, and where you start drilling down to the information that you actually need there.
Yeah.
I find that's a better way to interview myself. I think that you get more out of it, and you actually understand who that person is as a person, because especially if they need to fit into a team, you need to think of team dynamics, and then also you often break through the bullshit as well. Sometimes they come in and I don't know whether I'm allowed to say that, sorry, but
no, of course you are.
Yeah, you sort of like sometimes they come in and they've got a web of stuff concocted that they're probably going to fake it till you make it, if you will, and you tend to sort of get through a lot of that pretty quickly by breaking down those barriers, getting comfortable. But
there's a couple of really good things that you said there, which is the reason why you're asking some of those questions at the beginning. I think for anyone who's listening, I've often seen when I ask someone, oh, what do you do outside of work? Again, I'm just trying to make the person comfortable and make them relax a little bit. But they often read into that and think that it's a trick and they've got to somehow still sell themselves while they're doing that. So tip for anyone at home, you just heard the whole point of those icebreakers is to try and help you relax and just feel comfortable. So don't try and read in a secret message to what they're asking you. start getting a bit more comfortable, sit back in your seat, and it'll be much easier kind of process if you can build that rapport.
That being said, you do want to make sure that they're if they are coming into the team, and say for example, I know in the numerous roles, Friday afternoons we used to go to the pub all together. You want to make sure that they're going to be good value with everybody as well. So always important to make sure it's not fit.
That's another good point as well. And I think something that we're going to really notice in this interview with a boss episodes is that for me, when I'm interviewing someone, they're joining the organization. Me as HR or a recruiter is just hiring them to be in someone else's team. When you're hiring for your own team, you've got to spend every day sitting next to that guy and you've got to train them. You really need to make sure that whoever that is that's coming into your team is the right fit. So it almost becomes a little bit more personal for a manager hiring for themselves. And I think that definitely comes across in the differences in questions and styles that managers have. So talk us through, you were about to go there, but how do you normally run your interviews after you've gotten the person to relax? What's the next step? Are you going, chronologically through their CV, or are you firing off technical questions?
Yeah, sure. Great. Great question. So once I've got them to relax, then I start to drill down on their previous experience. So that's where obviously I've already had a look at the CV. It's a rare occurrence occasionally I'm brought in on interviews at the last minute, in which case, while the other person, might be an HR representative's having a bit of a chat, I'm usually quickly skimming through it. But in most cases, I've read through the CV first, especially if it's for a role in one of my teams. And I, you usually can pick up, sales roles or account management roles. They're relatively similar at most places. There's sort of core set of skills there, so you can start to drill down on that. They might have managed, tier one type organizations, the higher end. So, okay, well, who have you managed? What did you achieve there? It says here that you grew revenues by X. All right, well, what was the secret behind that? How did that happen? What was the strategy? And get them talking through it, right? And as they're talking through that, you want to drill down on that. Drill down onto what worked, what didn't, and I think what's one thing that's very important is it's good. Like I like to ask, what didn't work, or what did you try that you found didn't work, because you can see the thinking that they have, how they've changed their strategy, which, let's face it, in a sales role, you've got to think on your feet sometimes. Sometimes things won't work. So, you started on this, you pivoted your strategy and went down, aisle B instead, and all of a sudden, that saw results. So, drilling down on that, drilling down on how they interacted, obviously, with the team, any comments they might have had from their previous employment, if you will. Other things, what did you enjoy about it as well? You want to a bit of an understanding of who that person is. In sales, for example, often you get a few cowboys. Now, cowboys make great salespeople, right? But they often overpromise. In which case, cowboys are great, but you just need to keep them on a tight leash, right? You need to set boundaries around it. Whereas, if you're talking personality types, somebody that's a bit more steady or conscientious, something like that is not going to be such a cowboy. They're going to be far more sort of methodical, and in which case you don't have to sort of keep that leash on as well. But at the same time, they might not get as fast results. So understanding what the person's like, and more importantly, for when it does come to managing them, if they are successful and are part of the team, okay, well, how am I going to manage this person? How am I going to adjust my strategy as a manager? How many meetings do I have to book in? I had one manager myself, actually, that one time I caught up with him 2 times a week. And I remember when they first put the assistant the double week, every Tuesday, and every Thursday morning we caught up at 9 a.m. And I thought it was madness, but to be fair, it actually worked really well. It sort of, it meant that you were continuously focused, and it's a strategy that I've actually brought in place for myself with others at times, especially those that are a little bit more headstrong or cowboy type approach.
Yeah, to check in a little bit more. And I love that. It's really helpful for people at home to understand and to hear you talking about, okay, in the interview, you're not only just thinking about whether you want to hire that person, you're also forming an understanding of them so that you know, okay, how do I train this person? How do I train this other person? And it might be different depending on, you know, the strengths that you think that they have. And I think that's another way that that hiring managers are a bit different to maybe an HR person that you're interviewing with, because they're thinking long term about, okay, am I going to need to keep a close eye on this person? Is this one really independent? How much training are they going to need? How much hand-holding, reassurance are they going to need? All that kind of thing. Yeah, really great insights. What is your favorite interview question to ask?
Ooh. Yeah, good question. Good question. I've got a few. One is always at the start, what did you do on the weekend? Just because it breaks the ice, right? I think I mentioned this before for obvious reasons. Another one is a pretty common one. I suppose if you're talking actual media, tell me of a time, where something's gone wrong and how did you fix it, right? But I don't like to say it like that. It's more as I'm drilling down, much like I was saying before, you're talking through the experience, you're talking through, which accounts did you manage? Will talk me through, those accounts they might have managed, Qantas or Alinta Energy or, a decent size one, Telstra or something, or even a small one, Ray's Auto or something, right? And you're drilling down on what they did there, and how it worked, and that's when I'll sort of drop that question. Okay, now tell me, you're telling me, obviously you're explaining, how good you were at it. Now tell me about some of the problems you had there, and give me an example, because while they're already talking, they're already thinking about that client and that relationship. So, that they're not on the spot going, think of a time. And sometimes they sort of panic a bit because of that. They're already there and they're like, and usually they're like, I can, this one time. And they go right into the details of it. And that's where, again, you drill down further. You're sort of, okay. And why was that an issue? It may have been a deal that, terms might not have been negotiated properly, or they didn't have the right pillars they were up against competition. Some other competitors, chasing that deal. It might have been a tender process or something, and they'd formed a relationship with one person, but not others in the thing. And where they thought they were getting all the information, and in the box seat, they actually weren't. So, understanding, and again, you're sort of learning more about how they go through their sales process as well, what their skill level is in terms of the the overall sales process too. So all these little bits and pieces help you form, I suppose, that overall opinion on whether they'll be right. So that's probably one of my favourite ones.
Your favourite? What didn't go so well?
What didn't go so well, and how did you rectify it?
And I like that idea of doing it in context, because I know exactly the face that you get when you ask someone, so tell us about a time when, and they haven't thought of anything.
They panic.
Their mind's blank and they panic. Yeah. And you can see their eyes looking around, like up to the left, like, and then you can tell that they've picked an example, but it's not a very good one. And they start out on that example and they're not really sure that it's the right thing to use. And you're like, no, just keep thinking.
Yeah.
So it's a really good way to help that candidate, because they're already thinking about that role. But also, I imagine that would kind of, cut out some of the fakers who are just giving you the highlights reel, and you're kind of, throwing them a bit of a curveball by being like, okay, what about the problems? And they're going, I was here just ready to sell myself. I haven't thought about this.
There's nothing worse than when they turn around and the answer is, nah, there was never any problems, which, as a manager and, as a previous BDM and account manager, and, you work your way up the chain, there are always problems, right? There's always things that go wrong. Yeah. And, if they can't, if they, it's much like the question, tell me something about a weakness that you have or something that could be improved. They're like, I have no weaknesses. Worst answer you can possibly give. It's don't get me wrong. Yeah, it shows confidence, sure, but as a manager, it's like no.
I think about that in two ways. Either one, you're lying to me, and you're just flat out lying to say that there's no problems or you have no weaknesses, or two, which is probably worse, there were plenty of problems and you have plenty of weaknesses. You just didn't know about them. And that's even worse.
True.
So what is the best interview that you've ever run as contrasted with our tracky dack dude? What's the best candidate that kind of knocked your socks off?
Yeah, okay. Good question. I one of my best ones actually. It's a little strange because we didn't end up actually hiring him for my team, but we ended up hiring him for within the company. This is actually a gentleman that works at Appliances Online now. He was a younger kid that came in. A younger kid.
Are we giving him a shout out or are we keeping him anonymous?
I can give him a shout out. Yeah, his name's Alex. I forget his last name, but top kid. Anyway, he came in. This skinny little. He's only a little small bloke, but he came in. Obviously, well, he did say it once I drilled down. He was a bit nervous, but did my usual thing. Got him talking, and he opened right up. He was coming in for basically a account manager role in commercial was what he was interviewing for, but it was well out of his league, right? The kid was still pretty young, just out of uni. Top kid though, and he had a suit on that he'd obviously borrowed. It was way too big for him. I think he once we drilled down a bit and sort of got a bit of a rapport going, he did open up and said that his mum made him wear the suit, and credit to him, he had the thing on, right? But it swam on him. It did swim on him. But he'd done a stack of research. Obviously, he'd done his homework. He'd looked into the company, and he sort of, when he was going, a bit about the company, he did pretty well. When I was asking, do you know anything about the Winning Group or Appliances Online? He presented well. He was just a good kid. You could tell he just needed a bit of a break, right? And he'd obviously been sort of finding it a little bit hard. Anyway, as we got chatting, it turned out that we were talking about what he likes to do, all the rest, and he was right into his video games and all the rest, and he was explaining how just once I got him relaxed, he was talking about how he was a moderator for some video game chat thing. I'm not really sure of what it was or anything else, but anyway, long story short. He obviously had the right attitude. He obviously done his research. He presented well. Then once we got talking about this, I knew that we have obviously an online chat of online help, if you will, on the Appliances Online website, and we run that locally, and we were sort of looking people for that team. Anyway, long story short, I sort of said to the bloke, just hold here for a minute, walked out, went and got the guys that run the sort of engine room call center area and said, look, you've got to come and meet this kid. Gave him a quick rundown, all the rest, got him involved. And anyway, long story short, got the job, and I believe, was in charge, ended up being in charge of that whole team. A lot of people a lot older than him as well, but he's still at the company, still going strong. And, every time I walk past him in the hallways, he always has a bit of a chat, give him a high five. Like, mate, he's a great kid, Alex, if you're listening. Well done, champ. Well done. That's one of my favourite interviews I've ever done.
Love that. I think I remember that actually. Yeah. How good. He's had a great career.
Yeah, he's doing really well, and the confidence that's now coming out of him as well. Like you can see, he's growing as a person, and as a manager and a sort of senior leader of the business. It's great when you see people, develop as people as well. It's not just about what they can return to the business, but also watching them develop and get more confidence, and it's a very satisfying thing to see.
And I think the tip there for people at home is even if you don't necessarily have the skill set or you're not ticking every single box for that job, if you come across well, you make a good impression and that person sees potential in you, that can lead to other opportunities, and you've just maybe made a great contact that could lead to something later on. Yeah. So let's talk about internal applications rather than kind of hiring from external. I know you're a big believer in hiring and promoting from within. So if someone wanted to work in your team or, a different team in the business, what's your advice for internal
Yeah,
applying?
sure. Good question. Yeah, probably wasn't expecting that one, but yeah, great question. Happens all the time in numerous companies I've worked for. Always good to promote people through because they understand the systems, they understand the process, they understand the operation. Saves a lot in from a financial perspective, saves a lot in training costs, which is good. Also, they skill up rather quickly, and you've sussed the person out. Pretty early because you've sort of seen him around. So, as a manager, especially across a manager of a company where we've got over 1,000 employees now, you're always sort of keeping an eye out for people that have talent, have a bit of skill there, or potential, if you will. And you start to notice those people. They obviously work hard, and especially from a sales role, got a bit of charisma about them as well. Probably got good chat. Very important. So. Yeah, but yes, I would say if you are somebody that's working for an organisation that want to slide up a bit, obviously try to form a bit of a relationship with the manager of the new division. So there are numerous young guys and girls at the company that often we get chatting, whether it's in the kitchen or in the hallways or the old water cooler or whatever. Have a bit of a chat. Talk about it. Ask them what they do or what's involved in. Back when I was GM of commercial, I used to get it a fair bit, and they'd be asking, what's involved in the sort of, the commercial team or, as a commercial rep, those sorts of things. And in other words, basically planting the seed, sort of showing some interest, and flag it. Have a chat. Go, look, I'd really like at some stage, if there was ever an opportunity or a position open up to throw my hat in the ring for consideration type thing. And you'd be surprised at how that can lead sometimes. Sometimes as there's bridging positions, or we might have somebody's coming across and you need an assistant for a salesperson or something like that, and they don't have sales experience yet. So you go, well, okay, obviously I wasn't going to hire them as a sales rep yet, because they don't have that experience yet. But okay, well, let's pair them up as the assistant for somebody and learn off, especially one of the better sales team members, and then they're just from natural osmosis, right? They start to pick up how the process works, how a sales funnel works, just pricing, scheduling, proposals, tender responses, all those sorts of things, how it all comes together. And once they do that for a while, well, they're basically in the box seat for an actual BDM or an account management role. Likewise, by going through that, you start to work out whether they're better at more of a BDM, more of a new business, or I call it a hunter or a farmer analogy. Whether they'd be better at new business or whether they'd be better at account management. They might be really good at account management, not even realize it, right? And they're just attention to details good. The relationship skills is very good. So yeah, I would say speak to the person, establish a bit of a rapport. Never be afraid to sort of put your hand up and ask the question, or see if you can help out. Help out with some tenders or whatever it may be. If you see the sales team hanging late, ask if you can help out in some way, and just make contact. Right? Show some initiative.
And I love that reaction of if someone reached out and sent you an email and said, "Hey, I'm really interested in your team and what you do. Is there any chance we can, go for a coffee, or, do you mind if we catch up or whatever?" I think, internally, you have a huge opportunity there because that person's going, "Oh, this person works in the business. I'm totally open to that," as opposed to being, a stranger externally.
That's it. You get noticed, right? You get noticed doing those things.
And the other thing I wanted to touch on there is when you talked about, you notice those people, they work hard around the business. I think what some people forget with internal applications is your reputation will precede you. If you're known as in your team and your manager thinks that, this person, I've got some concerns about them, they, going home early every day, those sorts of things, that's going to damage your chances of making a relationship internally with a different team, because that's what you're going to hear around the place. Oh no, this is the superstar you really want to talk to, not that guy.
Yeah, definitely. I'll give you the tip here. Managers talk to one another. We often socialise with.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Yeah, we often all go out drinking together. We know each other pretty well. There's email chains and chat groups and all the rest where we know what's going on in the business, and we know who's performing, who's not, who's it's even in an organisation our size, with the amount of people we have, I can pretty much go through most of the divisions within the company and tell you who the star performers are and who might be a little lackluster, right? So you are aware of these things. And, we'll often, as managers, you'll actually leverage maybe some other managers if they might get along with some of them, some pretty well, and all of a sudden somebody's performance drops off. You may have had this happen before. Some of the listeners, all of a sudden, one of the other managers from another division, all of a sudden starts saying g'day a bit more and having a bit of a chat, and we use those tactics. It's a smart thing to do.
Keeping an eye on you.
Yeah. Well, it's you want to make sure they're okay as well, and perhaps they're finding it hard to talk to their direct line manager, for example. So somebody that's a bit more chatty or has a bit more of a softer or a harder touch for that matter, might have a closer relationship with them. So you'd be a fool not to leverage that in some way.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, cool. So let's talk salary.
Okay. Yep.
I've heard your approach on this before. What is your approach when discussing salary when going for a new job? Be honest.
Yeah, be honest. If it's me over the years, I always go for about 20% more than what I'm on, is what I say. And it's worked for me over the years, almost every single time. Throw out a high number. You're going for a new role, right? At the end of the day, you've been an HR representative, for many years. You'd know when it comes to sort of checking, it's sort of a ballpark check's done, but the exact salary, you'll sometimes, yes, not always though. Many times I've thrown an extra 20%. 30%, like sometimes ridiculous amounts, right? And even if they say no to that, they'll usually counter, and the counter will come back, higher than what you were hoping for or what you were prepared to accept.
Yeah.
So, fuck it, why not? What do you got to lose, right?
The worst I can say is no,
Worst you can say is no. I mean, don't get me wrong, don't go too ridiculous where you price yourself out, but a little bit of extra.
You want to do a bit of research.
A little bit of extra sauce there never hurts, right? And if you get it, well, happy days, right? It's, because if you don't get it and you sort of accept lower, it can take a fair bit of time to work your way up, if you will, right? So don't get me wrong. It's kind of nice when you can get people for and it's not blowing the budget, which is good. And you certainly want to reward people, but you've got to go through reviews and all the rest. And as a manager, when you're managing the P&L for a whole division, you've got to stretch that across an entire team, right? And often you've got most members in the team telling you they need a pay rise. So at some stage, you've got to balance that out, right? So if you can get it up front, have a crack at it, is what I say.
So true. And I think that's what sometimes people don't understand is if you're looking for the way to get the most of an increase, it's going to be outside of your company. It's always going to be harder to get that much of an increase where you are than it is to go somewhere else. And I'm not just talking about the embellishment part, but you're not going to see a more than a 15% pay increase normally internally. There's policies about that, about a cap on your maximum promotion amounts and things like that. And also people just internally have this idea of like, oh, well, we want to give them something later, next year if they earn it. We want to save some for later, that kind of mentality. So negotiate up front, for sure. I don't know if I'm quite as confident as you on the add 20% to your salary, but that's a little tip out there. The difference between men and women in salary negotiation. So be confident.
Yeah,
I think is the advice there.
Have a crack, right? Like, you're in sales, right? Especially if you're going for a sales role, you're in sales, right? Like, have a crack.
True.
And the other thing that I would say, if I can interject quickly, if you're going for a sales role, right, there's a sales process. You close, right, and often often with sales, it's like, if we can basically, work all these points out, these pain points out, if you will, what's the timeline to close? What's the client timeline to making this deal happen? It's always, you always want to know that as a salesperson. So even in the interview, I've done it myself at times. Asking, always can't go with a few questions. One of the questions I always used to like to ask was, all right, what skills are you looking for in this role, or what skills do I need to demonstrate in this role? And as you're talking through that and you're talking through the examples and all the rest, hit them with the close. Like, all right, if you feel that I've answered your requirements of A, B, C, whatever they were, and recite them to them if you can, always scores points. What sort of what else would be required in order for me to get this job, and what sort of timelines would it be to close this or to make this happen, right? Like, that is a textbook example of somebody how you should close a deal, right? Understanding that information. So if they're doing that in an interview, they know what they're doing in a sales process. Their credibility goes up immediately. So, if it's your
I love that.
If it's your first time doing it, maybe practice it on a mate or something first. But if you've done it before and you've been in the sales game previously, and you know that that technique, those questions, throw it in there, close them out, go for it.
Yeah, it's the difference between telling and showing. So instead of saying, I close deals, I'm a good closer, do it. Put it out there. Show them how you close, as opposed to saying that you're good at it. I think it always carries a lot more weight. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for the chat. I thought I might ask, what's one piece of advice you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Do a bit of research. Obviously, don't go in blind. Go with some questions. Be prepared. I mean, sales is you sell by asking questions, right? So get some questions ready, and even if usually in the interview process, they'll say, do you have any questions for us? And even if the questions you've gone with, they've answered throughout your communication back and forward in the interview, you can say that. You can go, well, the questions I had were blah, 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 and you've answered them already. But go with questions, be prepared. As I said, show up on time early, show up on time or early preferably. And but be yourself. Be yourself. That's I suppose the last bit of information. Don't try and fake it too much. Be yourself. Let that show. And because if it's a good fit, it'll be a good fit, and that's when the team will really gel together. And if you don't get a job, keep going, keep applying for others as well, because you will find one that'll be an excellent fit, and when you do, you'll love the job, and you'll have a great time with your team, and you'll love what you do. So to me, that's one of the most important things. So good luck to you all.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today, James. And everyone at home, I hope you got something out of this for your sales roles that you're applying for, or even just understanding, the hiring manager perspective. So you can catch us next week. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to Interview Boss. If you want to hear more from us, make sure you hit subscribe. We're a new podcast, so if you liked this episode, we'd really appreciate it if you could give us a review so we can help even more people. For more advice, inspiration, and a supportive community, join us in the Interview Boss Facebook group.
If we've been your job search besties and helped you in some way, there's a cool way you can support the show. Shout us a virtual coffee.
We get a huge kick out of reading all of your success stories. Head to buymeacoffee.com/interviewboss and shout us a cuppa.
If you keep us caffeinated, we can keep the content coming.